Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our regular Thursday lecture. My name is Victoria. I'm the Outreach Coordinator for Education USA Ukraine. Maybe you haven't heard of us. We are the official source on US higher education, offering accurate, comprehensive, and unbiased information about opportunities to study at accredited colleges and universities in the United States. We understand that the process of applying to US universities is quite different from that in Ukraine. So we are here to help you with any step of the process, answer questions from beginning to end. And today we're going to talk about creating a portfolio for film, drama, and arts programs in the United States. You may already know that the application process to creative majors requires not only standard documents. A portfolio plays a key role in demonstrating your talent to the admissions committee and faculty. But what is the best way to approach its creation? We are here today to answer this and many more of your questions. And here joining us are wonderful representatives of the New York Film Academy. Thank you so much for being with us. And to any of you watching us at home, I would just like to encourage you to reach out to us, put your questions down in the comments, and interact as much as possible. So, Lizzie, thank you so much for being with us. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Lizzie Sack. I am the Senior Director of Agency Relations here at the New York Film Academy College of Visual and Performing Arts. And part of my job is to travel to countries throughout the world, including the Ukraine, to seek out talented students who are interested in studying in the visual, media, and performing arts in the United States. And while I'm on the road, I meet with students who are interested in many types of visual or performing arts, whether that's filmmaking or photography or acting for film or producing. And the main question that I get from teachers, from agents, from students and parents is, what should I include in my portfolio, or how do I prepare a portfolio or an audition? So today I've asked four professionals to help guide you through the preparation to apply for a visual and performing arts school in the United States. So I am joined by Jonathan Whitaker, who is the chair of filmmaking at the New York Film Academy New York campus. Jonathan?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having us. As Lizzie said, my name is Jonathan Whitaker, and I'm one of the chairs of the filmmaking department at our New York City campus. In addition to being a professor of directing and cinematography and sometimes screenwriting. Sometimes I fill many roles, but I'm very happy to be here with you all this evening.
Thank you. And I have Roger Del Pozo, who is many things, including one of the director of performing arts admissions at New York Film Academy. Roger?
Hi, Lizzie. Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name is Roger Del Pozo. I am the Senior Executive Enrollment Specialist at the New York Film Academy. I do handle a lot of admissions-related responsibilities as they pertain to performing arts programs at the New York Film Academy, including reviewing auditions. So I'm excited to talk about that today. Good to see you all.
Thank you. And we also have David Major, who is the chair of photography at New York Film Academy New York campus. David?
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thanks so much for being here today. Again, my name is David Major. I chair the photography department here on our New York campus. And I'm really excited to talk with you guys about portfolio submissions and how to think about the creative process of building your portfolio.
Thank you. And in just a little bit, we will also be joined by Tony Schwartz, who is a faculty member of our producing program in Los Angeles. So he will be here in just a second. But we're going to speak to each one of these gentlemen, asking the questions about portfolios for their discipline, and then we'll open it up to questions at the end of each discipline discussion. So feel free to write in your questions and we'll talk about them when we can. So we'll start with filmmaking. So Jonathan, if I can ask you, what is generally included in a portfolio for filmmaking students?
Yeah, so great question. Typically, it falls into one or two categories. It's either a writing sample or a visual sample. A writing sample could be an excerpt from a feature-length screenplay. It could be a short screenplay. It could be a short original story, so a narrative a story. It could be a treatment or an outline for a story that you aim to tell, whether that's fiction or nonfiction, but definitely a narrative. In regards to visual, visual, of course, because it's filmmaking, it could be a short film, right? That could be a live action and or an animated film. Or it could actually be something a bit more outside of the box. It could be some kind of visual treatment, whether that is a series of photographs, whether that's photographs of maybe sculptures you've done, or any modeling. It could be CGI imagery. It could be paintings, anything that really shows your visual literacy. So all of that would be submitted. I will note that everything would be submitted digitally. We do not accept, of course, physical copies of things. And if you do send them, you're probably not going to get them back. So please don't send us your precious original pieces of artwork. And also, regardless if it's visual or written, we always require some description to give us some context as to what your actual role was on that particular project. Obviously, the assumption is that you were the original creative on it and that you were the director of it, or you were the real the sole writer of it. But still, we need that in writing to make sure that that is definitely the case.
Great. So it's okay, per se, if you have not made a film before.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, again, that's what we're going to teach you. We're going to teach you the language of cinema. We're going to teach you how to take a story, whether that's in the verbal form or the written form, and then put that into the visual form that is filmmaking. And so you don't need to have that skill set before coming to join us. What you do need to have, though, of course, is a passion for telling stories, and having something to say, because that's something that we really can't teach you. We can motivate you, and we can hopefully inspire you, but ultimately that has to come from you.
That's fair. Wonderful. And if a student has in-progress work, is that okay as well?
Absolutely. Again, we're not looking. I said again because I kind of alluded to this, but I didn't outright say this. So again, it's not fair. But we're not looking for polished work, right? So if you were sending us something that is a rough cut of a film, or is a maybe beyond a rough cut, of course, but let's say like it's not color corrected, the sound's not perfect. Those are the skills and tools that we're going to share and to teach you, right? We're not looking for the polished work yet. We actually much prefer very exciting raw material that again shows who you are and what you have to say and what you have to share with the world.
Yeah. And as we are speaking to students from another country whose English is not their first language, is it okay if it's in another language, or do you prefer it to be subtitled? How would that work?
Yeah, I would prefer, it's not about me, but we would prefer it would be subtitled. Of course, if it's a written sample, it would need to be in English in order for us to read it. If it's a short film and it's very dialogue heavy, then I would like for it to be subtitled, because I want to see, be able to read and understand the kind of dialogue that you would write or that you like to work with, how you directed it. So I would need that context. Ultimately, it's a visual medium, but still, yes, the subtitles would be needed.
Sure. And if a student, say, has made a number of films in their past, is there a set number of films that you would want to see, or length of films?
Yeah, there's not we don't prescribe an exact number. But we give you some ranges. I would say, if you've done a multitude of films, please don't send them all. We're quite frankly just don't have the bandwidth to watch hours of content, especially if they're feature length, even if they're shorts. What I would say is go through those films, and just like you would put together your reel for a director's reel, or if you're putting yourself up for a job, put together a highlight reel of full scenes that you think best exemplify your voice as an artist and the stories you aim to tell. And I say full scenes because filmmaking, unlike cinematography, as a filmmaker, as a director, we want to see that you can actually direct a scene that has a full arc to it, that has a beginning, a middle, and end, like a story does. It's a microcosm of an overall story. And so not just a highlight shot of here and here and here with some beautiful imagery and music. We want to actually see, is there something here? Is there a story in this scene? So, in a very long-winded way, the answer would be don't send them all. Maybe choose one. If you're going to choose multiple, cut them down. And I would say stay below 10 minutes.
Okay, perfect. And you had stated earlier that it should be submitted digitally. So YouTube, Vimeo, stuff like that would be perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, if you can have it password protected, so it's not public, and you can send us a password to it, that just, it further confirms to us that you own the content and that we're able to see it. And yes, a platform that is going to host the content so we don't have to download it. I think we all know, for obvious reasons, downloading content from strangers on the web is not the best practice if you want to have a healthy computer system. So yeah, digital and hosted on a platform that we can access.
Perfect. So if you had to give one or two pieces of advice to students creating their first visual portfolio, what would that be?
It would really be that, and this is hard advice to take, but it would be like, I think sometimes as artists we overanalyze things, and especially when we're applying for something. I know actors do this when they're auditioning. I know filmmakers do this when they send their creative portfolios, or you're in an interview, and we think too much about what the other person on the other side of it wants to hear or wants to see. And I would say, don't do that. Think about who you want to say that you are as a person, right? And so don't be concerned with what you think I want to see. Be more concerned with what you want to show me, and be bold and make bold choices, because nothing excites us more as educators than seeing a unique voice and somebody who has a very strong opinion, a very strong, viewpoint or POV of the world, and maybe it doesn't align with mine. That's great. That's fine. Nothing needs to align with mine. But I want that energy in the classroom, and I want to help that person get their voice out into the world. So I would say, yeah, that would be one piece of advice. The second piece of advice, and you said maybe more than one, would be also think about, be a complete package in regards to having that alignment. Once you really take that kind of introspective look and say, okay, who am I as an artist? What do I want to say? Try to have everything aligned towards that, and to support that central spine of you. And so everything from your statement of purpose to the font that you use, to the way that you present the material, right? Be professional about that, because there's two things that we're looking for, of course, right? We're looking for people who pay attention to detail, who get things done on time, who follow directions, because in order to be successful, that's the business side of filmmaking. I don't care how great of an artist you are. If you can't deliver with the specs they need on time, you're never going to be hired. And so, quite frankly, we don't want to put you out into the workforce. So always read the requirements, always think about how you're presenting yourself. And then the second part, of course, is have a unique voice, make bold choices, and show us who you are.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's one of the best things about New York Film Academy is the fact that we are so international. We're about 50% international. So we have stories from literally all over the world, and that it makes it very exciting and makes it very unique to everyone who's attending.
I agree. I feel very fortunate to be in the classroom with students from all over the world. Through the years, it has taught me quite a lot. So I think I get out of it as much as I put into it.
I agree. So we'll open it up to questions. If people have questions about filmmaking portfolios, you can go ahead and just type them in. And I think we would have to wait for just a second, just in case. And then we'll move on to acting after we take some questions. This is not your only chance. You will have time to ask at the end as well, so don't worry.
Do you want me to sing while we're waiting?
Could you? Do you want me to sing?
I cannot sing.
All right. Well, we'll move on to acting. And of course, we'll open it back up to questions at the end. So don't think that you've missed your chance. So thank you very much, Jonathan. It's been a pleasure.
Always. Thank you, Lizzie, for having me. And
You're welcome.
I'll remain here for questions at the end.
Thank you. So I will now invite Roger Del Pozo to join me to speak a little bit about the Acting for Film portfolios. Before I do that, I do want to introduce really quick, I would like to introduce Tony Schwartz, who is a faculty member of our producing program at the Los Angeles campus. Tony, if you want to say hello.
Yeah, hey, sorry I'm late. I had to take my son to school this morning. I've been teaching at the Burbank campus of NYFA for about 11 and a half years. I teach in the producing department as well as in the filmmaking department. And before that, I worked in the film and television industry for about 25 years as an assistant director and a line producer. So I've got a lot of experience, practical experience in the industry, as well as quite a bit of time teaching.
Fantastic. Thank you. We'll get to you in just a second. So I'll invite Roger to come and speak with me as well. So Roger, give us just a little bit of background of what you know about auditioning, because it's pretty fascinating.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I was a casting director for a while here in New York before I started at New York Film Academy. I did that for over a decade. So my experience really is auditioning actors. That's what I've been doing for the last over 20 years. At the New York Film Academy, when students do apply to a performing arts program, like our Acting for Film program, or even the musical theater program, they wouldn't necessarily be submitting a portfolio to be accepted. They would have to prepare a specific audition. And I am the principal person at the New York Film Academy who reviews those auditions, who does evaluations. I also audition students in person when we're able to do that at NYFA. So yeah, that's really what my background is in.
Perfect. Yes, I've had the honor of traveling the world with Roger and auditioning students live, so it's been fantastic. So I'll ask you, Roger, for the New York Film Academy, what do we require in an Acting for Film audition?
Sure. So like I said, you wouldn't be preparing a portfolio per se. You can submit a resume, you can submit a reel, but that would be considered supplemental material. Primarily, we're going to ask you to prepare an audition. And for the Acting for Film program, that audition would consist of 2 monologues that you would find, that you would prepare. They should be from a published source. We prefer monologues, ideally from a stage play. You can also pick a monologue from a screenplay, but if I was giving a recommendation, I would say try to utilize stage plays as much as possible. And we ask that the work is contemporary. We want to see work that was published post 1960. You want to make sure when you're applying to a performing arts program that you read through the requirements there in detail, because some schools will require you to prepare a classical piece. We do not do that. We want both pieces to be contemporary, published, age appropriate, and we ask that they're contrasting. And generally that would mean that you would prepare one comedic piece as well as one dramatic piece.
Great. And again, this might be an obvious question, but the pieces have to be in English, correct?
They do. We do ask that you perform in English. We have to see you perform in English. We have to see you interpret material that was written in English. So yes, we would ask that you prepare pieces in English.
That makes sense. And where could students find monologue suggestions if they don't know already?
Sure. Well, first, for all actors, I would recommend reading as many plays and as screenplays as you can. You want to be reading plays all the time. That's going to inform your craft as an actor, but it's also going to give you inspiration when you need to find pieces to perform. So I would recommend reading plays. I would recommend utilizing going online and searching monologues. You know, there are a lot of different resources online now where you can find compilations of monologues from different sources. So it can give you can read a lot of monologues in a short amount of time. I would recommend, if you find a monologue online and it's from a play or a screenplay, that you do go out and find that play or screenplay so that you can read the entire play, because that will give a lot of context to your specific piece. But again, read as much material as you can. As an actor, you should be watching as many things as you possibly can, and look for things that really speak to you, that say something that you would want to say, that help you give you some perspective, help you to think about these words from a character's perspective.
Sure. And I would say, as much as we would love to be able to travel to every country and meet people live and in person, most of the time we review students' auditions that have been recorded. So what's the best way to record an audition?
Sure. Yeah. Just like in the professional world, most auditions now are going to happen, at least the initial audition, because the performer is going to self-tape their audition. So we do see most students will be submitting self-taped auditions. Now, it doesn't have to be a professional production, but you do want to make sure that you have a fairly good camera. Most of our phone cameras will be sufficient. You want good lighting. You want to make sure you have good sound, that you have a neutral background. And we do try and help students to coach them on how to prepare a self-tape audition when they do apply to a program at the New York Film Academy. So we'll send you guidelines on how we like to see things. But generally, yeah, you would be recording that initial audition on your own and then submitting it digitally to the school.
Would it be best to record it up close or from further back? Is there a specific sweet spot?
Sure. I mean, I will generalize a little bit, but we have to see you. And we are generally watching on monitors, like laptop monitors. So you don't want to be too far away from the camera. You also don't want it to be a tight close-up, because I think that's going to eliminate your physicality in terms of what you're projecting in your performance. I think a medium shot is probably adequate in most situations. If you're seated, it can even be a little bit tighter. If you are standing, you might want to go to a medium shot, waist up shot, just so we get a sense of your physicality as well. But it will still be close enough that we can see subtlety in your performance.
That would make sense. So if you had to give one or two pieces of advice for students who are auditioning for their first time or for a school, what would that be?
Couple of things quickly. I think prepare, read the piece, make sure you have the piece memorized, make sure you're making very specific choices. So put the time in advance to really prepare those pieces to the best of your ability. And then I would say, remember that we're not auditioning you for a specific role. We are trying to make a determination as to whether you would make a strong student in our programs. So understand the audition is about you. It's about you showing us who you are, giving us a sense of your personality, giving us a sense of, as Jonathan referred to when he was talking about filmmakers, we want to see that you take risks, that you have courage, that you make brave choices. So I would say, show us who you are with all of your creativity. Try not to be afraid. Don't worry too much about our response. Be concerned with showing us everything that's interesting about you.
Mm-hmm. I like that. So we will open it up to questions about acting for film auditions. Again, we'll wait a couple of seconds, and then if not, we'll open it towards the end as well. And then we will move on to producing portfolios. So if you have any questions, please let us know.
I don't know if you saw, but we did have a question, it looks like, from a student asking about how to present a theater director's portfolio. It looks like Juliana wrote that. I can address that a little bit from my point of view, and then maybe Jonathan, you can jump in. If you have directed plays, I think one thing you may submit your booklet that has your director's notes in it. You may present photographs from that performance. You may even want to present like critical responses to any of the performances that you directed. And again, if you have any questions about that kind of stuff, talk to your admissions representative when you apply, because you may have a specific background that we would be able to kind of guide you as to what we want to see based on what you would be presenting. So, but again, you may present photographs, you may present your director's booklet, any kind of preparation that you've done that you can show us. All of that would be acceptable. And I don't know, Jonathan, if you have any advice for a theater director?
No, I would say, Roger, I think you gave spot on advice. And again, the things about the preparation, maybe breaking down the actors' motivations or any prompts that you gave them, all of that would be applicable.
Thank you so much for your answer. And thank you, Juliana, for joining us today.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'll go ahead and ask Tony to join us. Again, Tony is a faculty member at our Los Angeles campus who has extensive background in producing, and he, as I understand it, is one of the main faculty members to review the producing portfolios. So Tony, if you could just let us know what exactly is required for a producing portfolio in general.
So we receive we receive short films. That's a great way to sort of get a sense of somebody's skill in telling a story. We get screenplays, either short film screenplays or excerpts from longer screenplays, feature screenplays or pilots. I've reviewed web series pilots in the past, critical studies essays. Although the critical studies essays are a little, you don't really get a sense of. You get a sense of an applicant's writing skills and their ability to interpret work, and that's helpful. But I always try to emphasize, in my teaching and when I'm talking to students or prospective students that, really what we want to focus on more than anything in the producing program is, can you tell a story? And so to me, scripts, either, short scripts, short film scripts, or excerpts from screenplays or pilots are really a good way for me to get a sense, as to whether you can tell a story. We're not looking for, it doesn't have to be perfect. The formats, I see lots of different formats. That to me is not as important. We will teach you the proper format for writing. But what I'm really looking for is, something unique in the storytelling, interesting characters. Characters to me are so important. And so I like to, like when I'm looking at a script, that's one of the things that I'm really looking at. Is the dialogue authentic? Are the characters authentic? Are they real? Do they feel like actual people? That sounds sort of silly to say, but you can tell. I think it's really important for prospective students, if you're going to submit a script, write what you know. Don't take on a subject that you are not that familiar with. It makes it a lot harder to be authentic. If you write what 100% of the time it's going to be authentic because it is what it's your lived experience. Mm-hmm. Regarding short films, I do get a lot of short films that I review. And again, I'm not looking for perfect technical quality. Sometimes that's just not possible. You're shooting it on a phone, you're shooting with your friends. Again, I'm more interested in seeing whether or not you can tell a story, and what your point of view is.
Sure. So if a student has worked on a project in the past but was not the producer, can they submit that work?
It depends on what the role is. If they were the director, or sure. If they were the cinematographer, yeah, but again, we are a producing program, so I think the focus really is on, being, if not the producer, then the director. Mm-hmm. I will, in the past, if a student has come, with a prospective student has come with, a portfolio, and they've been a cinematographer on a number of projects, we will look at that because, cinematography is telling a story. You're telling a story visually. You're contributing to the overall vision of a film. And so that yes, I would take that. Editing also, because again, we always say there are three writers on a film. There's the writer, the director, and the editor, and each one has a hand in shaping and crafting the story.
Absolutely. And this was mentioned before with Jonathan, but if a student's short film or film is not in English, do you require subtitles?
Most definitely. Yeah. It's really, unless there's no dialogue,
Right.
or if, it has to be subtitled or in English, because obviously, I can't evaluate the story as well if it's not in English.
Sure. So in your many years in the industry, if you had to give advice to students who are interested in studying producing, what would that be?
So that's a great question. There are really two aspects. I mean, there's many aspects of producing, but there are two primary aspects. There's the creative producing, which is, developing stories and working creatively with the creative team, the director and the production designer, and all of the people that contribute creatively to a vision. And then there's also what we call line producing, which is more about the logistics and the management of the production.
Mhm.
And so not every producer, that we've had in our program, is really, interested as much in the creative process as they are in the line producing, in the production management and the logistics. And so, you can have different skill sets. I think the best producers can do both. The
Mhm.
best producers understand the creative process and will make valuable contributions to the creative process while also being able to manage the crew and deal with the logistics and deal with problem solving. I think, but you don't have to have both skill sets to be a successful producer.
I think that's good to know. Thank you so much, Tony. I will open it up to any questions about producing. Again, we'll have time at the end as well. So there is a question from Masha about if we could give suggestions for a visual arts portfolio. And that's quite a broad question. The visual arts will sort of depend more on which discipline you're interested in studying. So for instance, filmmaking, we would be looking at, film students might have made scripts, photographs, drawings, short stories. For producing, it can be, again, any of the films, any written work. And then for acting, as Roger had mentioned, it would be the acting for film, although that's not a visual art. But we will also go into details about the photography portfolio in just a second as well. So the visual arts is going to depend a little bit more on what exactly you're looking to study discipline-wise.
Yeah, I would say for producing, it really does need to be, it can't be photograph, right? I mean, again, photographs tell stories, absolutely. But we're looking for, something more, a short film, a webisode, things like that.
Great. Perfect. Thank you so much, Tony.
Sure.
I'll go ahead and ask David Major to join us, if you would please, sir.
Absolutely.
David is the chair of our photography program at the New York campus. So, David, what is generally included in a photography portfolio?
Well, more often than not, it's photographs, right? We want to see images. And what's interesting, what's happening now, I think there's a big movement with AI. I'm sure everybody's talking about that. Those are things that we'll start looking at as well. But really, we'd like to see more traditional sort of lens-based images that you've created on your own.
Mm-hmm. Does it have to be from a professional camera? Can it be from a phone? There's so many options nowadays. So I think some students may think that maybe their phone isn't what you're looking for, but from what I understand, those are better than what we had in the past.
Yeah. So, the truth is, it doesn't really matter to me what device you're using, what the technology is you're using to create your images. You are still a creative thinker. And that's really what I want to see, right? Is how do you see and think creatively? So use your phone, use a DSLR, shoot it on film, use a medium format camera, use a mirrorless camera. It really doesn't make a difference because cameras are not creative. You are, right? And
Mhm.
that's really what's important for me to see. I want to get a sense of how you think creatively, how you see creatively, and the steps you take to actually make those images.
Mhm. How many photographs would you recommend including in a portfolio?
Great question. I'd say between 10 and 20, 15 to 20 really being the sweet spot. I've had submissions before of like 50 to 60 images. Please don't do that. It's not helpful. It's way too much to look at, because I also want you things to think about in terms of submission. You want to submit your strongest work. Now, I'm not expecting, as the other folks have said, we don't expect you to be an expert at it already. That's why you're coming to school, right? You're coming to school to become more knowledgeable about whatever discipline you want to study. But that being said, really think about showing strong stuff, and you can tell a story in a single image. You can tell a story across 15 to 20 images as well. And again, that's kind of what I would suggest is that you're submitting work that has a similarity to it. I don't want to see your best of here's my sunset and here's a portrait and here's a picture of my pet and things like that. I want to see an idea. I want to see that you're thinking about telling a story through these images. So maybe it's a series of images of you hanging out with your friends, right? It's just you're photographing your friends. There's all sorts of interesting stuff that can happen there. Maybe it is a series of landscapes if that's what you're interested in. Maybe it's a series of food photographs. Like think about an idea that's going to sort of carry a thread throughout all the images.
Mm-hmm. And would you want, I don't know how to phrase this, but should a student show work that's been heavily edited, like with Photoshop, or should it be more like raw?
Again, it can go either way. If you're comfortable using editing software, sure, great. But I don't expect you to know any of that, right? And that's, again, why you're coming to school. We're going to teach you all those skills. So if you've got some editing skills and you want to put some time into working on the images, great. If you don't have any skills and you're sending me raw images, that's also fine. Again, I want to see you as a visual thinker and a creative thinker. So either one of those, either direction is fine.
So again, we request that they are submitted digitally. While we would love to look at hard copy photos, it's probably not going to happen. Is there a best way to do that, whether it's through a website or Instagram or anything along those lines?
That's a great question. What I don't want to see, we'll start with that. I don't want to get a folder full of JPEGs. That doesn't show me that you're interested in creating a professional looking or professional feeling submission. So yes, a PDF is great. A website, if you have it, is great. Instagram is fine as long as you're creating a separate sort of group of images for us to look at. I don't want to go through your entire Instagram account, right? That's not helpful. So best ways, a dedicated PDF that shows your images that I can just scroll through, a website or a section of a website that can really just pinpoint these 15, 20 images. I think that's the best way to do it.
Great. So if you had to give one piece of advice for students who are submitting a photography portfolio, what would that be?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think at the end of the day, you have to believe in what you're doing, right? And sending in work that you really are attached to and connected to and have feelings about is better and more important, I think, than just showing me what you know technically.
Mm-hmm.
I would much rather see work that you're connected to that's interesting, that tells a story, than things that are technically perfect. Because again, you're coming to school to learn those skills. I don't expect you to be an expert, but I expect you to be connected to what you're showing.
Mm-hmm. Would it be possible for students to submit something other than photographs, or are you specifically just looking for photos?
Yeah, great question. That's fine. anything that shows your creative thinking. It can be writing, it can be sculpture, it can be painting, any of the sort of creative or visual arts are fine as a portfolio, right? Again, I'm not expecting you to be an expert photographer. I know I've said this over and over again. If you don't have a camera, if you don't have a way to produce, visual images that way, other forms of creative expression are fine.
Great. Thank you. So if there are any questions about a photography portfolio, please let us know. If not, I think we can open it up to just general questions as well, and we'd be happy to answer them for you.
I would just like to say thank you to all of you for such a wonderful presentation today. I immensely enjoyed listening to you and learning from you, and thank you for sharing your knowledge, your expertise with Ukrainian students. I would like to encourage all of our audience members to put their questions down below, or maybe some of the things you are still looking forward to hearing or are curious about. And while we wait for questions, I actually have a question of my own, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And that would be concerning common mistakes when putting together a portfolio, be it for filming or producing, or maybe even when preparing for an audition. What are some of the common mistakes that you've encountered?
That's a great question. I'll open it up to the gentleman.
I mean, I can start. So one of the things, again, that I look for is I'm not looking for like perfect format, as I said with writing, but sloppiness. Lots of we get submissions from students from all over the world. If it's really sloppily put together, that will sometimes be a negative for me. With regard to film submissions, again, we don't expect things to be perfect, but depending on the program, for instance, for the BFA program or for the 1-year certificate program, I'm not expecting students or applicants to have much experience. With the MFA program, and sometimes students are coming from an undergraduate program where they were studying film, because I can see in the credits of the film that it was either at a university, produced at a university, produced at a college. There I am going to be a little bit more critical of a student turning in maybe a sort of a what I feel is like an unfinished project, right? It's almost like a rough cut. I just had this happen a few weeks ago where an applicant had submitted a film that was produced at a university here in the United States. And it really felt like a rough cut. The sound was not good. It was very uneven. The color timing was uneven. That to me is that I feel like is a little bit sloppy. So if you've got previous experience and you're coming from an undergraduate program, make sure that you're turning in, what you feel is near or final version of that particular film.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else?
Can I add to that?
Of course.
I think any kind of writing that you're sending in, even if it's descriptions of photographs or if you're sending in a screenplay or something like that, just spell check it, please. I think that goes exactly to what Tony was saying about sloppiness. Is we have this amazing technology that can fix all that stuff for us, and I think especially if you're writing English as a second language or you're doing a translation, just double check it or have somebody proofread it for you before you send it in.
100%.
I can talk about auditioning a little bit. I would just say make sure that you're preparing the material, that you're putting in enough time so that you can memorize it. Make sure that you're making choices. Make sure that you're picking material that shows you in the best light. And beyond that, I would agree with Tony and David that the professionalism of your production, while it doesn't have to be a professional production, we want to avoid, common mistakes or just lack of preparation or sloppiness when preparing and submitting your material, because that will reflect negatively. I recommend for performers to utilize something like Google Drive or something similar, where they're organizing their material in a manner that's laid out in a way that anyone can look at it and kind of understand it when they're submitting it. So just making sure that you're you have to look at the audition as you would look at any other part of your application, and it should show, even if there is a lack of experience, it can show that you put in the time, you put in the preparation, that you're very thoughtful about how you're submitting your work.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
Thank you so much for such an encouraging answer. And we've got another question from Daria. So Daria is wondering, do you have any advice for creating a portfolio for a game design major?
I can address it a little bit, and then Lizzie, maybe you can jump in. We do have game design at the New York Film Academy, and generally students, Daria, I see that you've already created games. That would be the best thing to submit. Yep. So if you've worked on any games, whether they're digital games or even board games, physical board games, that would be the best. I know that our department really responds to that work. In lieu of that, you can definitely submit other types of visual art that you've created, because we do think that that would have an impact on the kind of games that you would create, or even written work, or even some students will submit marketing one-sheets, like they're thinking about a game from a producer's perspective. So they'll talk about the game that they want to create almost as if they're writing a treatment for a film that they want to create. So we would accept that as well. But Daria, you said you had games already, and that would really be the best thing to submit if you've worked on any games, because our department, they get very into that. They are creating games all day long. That's what you're going to be doing as part of the program. So that probably would be the most successful thing to submit for both acceptance and also for potential scholarship. So,
Yep, that's exactly correct. Anything that has code samples or level maps or design documents, that's what we would look for. And Roger touched on it just a little bit, but for the New York Film Academy, once you're submitting your portfolio or your audition, you're being reviewed not only for acceptance to the New York Film Academy, but also for a potential talent-based award. So not only do you want to put yourself forward in a good light to be accepted, but your work could also help get you an internal scholarship as well. So something to think about.
Thank you so much for such wonderful answers. And my question would be a follow-up on funding and expenses for submitting an application. So is there any chance to get an application fee waiver, and what would be required for that?
That's always an option. If we have students who have mentioned that they were a part of this webinar, I'm sure we could do something about that. But for the application, for us, it really is going to depend on the program and the length of programs. So for any program, we have 4 and 8 week workshops, as well as 1 and 2 year conservatory programs, and then the associate's, bachelor's, and master's degrees. So for any of those, students do have to have their proof of high school graduation, or if they're applying for a graduate program, they would have to have their proof of undergraduate graduation. And then, of course, for any program of 1 year or longer, it would be one of these portfolios or auditions that the gentleman has talked about. If you are looking to come for a degree program, we do also require 2 letters of recommendation, and those would come from anyone who has worked with you professionally or taught you. You do also have to submit a statement of purpose, which explains to us why you are interested in studying in this major, why the New York Film Academy, what makes you want to be a storyteller. And then we do also require either a TOEFL, IELTS, or a Duolingo exam, and the score is dependent on the level of program. So there are quite a few opportunities for students to show us their work through both the statement of purpose as well as the portfolio. So we are here to assist in that whole process as well. I'm happy to give out my email if anyone has any questions as well.
Thank you so much for such an encouraging answer. And our final question would be from Masha. So Masha is wondering about compiling a portfolio with paintings that are made in one single style, or would it be better to prepare one that has distinct styles? So would it be an advantage that an applicant has mastered one style to perfection, or would it rather be more valuable to the to the person reviewing the portfolios to show that an applicant can work in different styles and show different sides of their creativity?
I'll jump in on that. That's okay. I was going to give a non-answer, so maybe you should jump in, because I was going to say that, my having reviewed many portfolios, my initial instincts say that to show the variety, to show a bit of range, would probably be more interesting. That said, if that one particular style really speaks to your voice, to what best represents you as an artist, then don't worry about variety for variety's sake. Go with what is the strongest pieces that you have, right? So it's kind of answered it both ways, right? So maybe David, you have a more clarifying answer than that.
Actually, I was going to pretty much say the exact same thing. Like, if you're a painter and you have been painting long enough that you have found a particular style, great, right? It takes a really long time to get there typically. So if you're not at that point, that's okay too. Again, you're coming to school to learn. And I don't think any of the disciplines or any of the portfolio reviewers are expecting you to be perfect or an expert at this point. So again, if you found a style that you really connect with and that's how you enjoy painting, show it to us. If you haven't and you can show us a variety of stuff, that's great too. So kind of the same answer as Jonathan.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for such a wonderful answer, and thank you all of you for sharing your insights with us today. As I've said, I immensely enjoyed today's meeting and learned so much for myself. I would like to encourage our students to reach out to Education USA if you still have any more questions about the New York Film Academy specifically, or maybe any questions in general about creating a portfolio or any of the steps of the application process. We would be more than happy to help you. And of course, do not forget to tune in to our regular Thursday lectures. Thank you once again for being with us and for helping our students on their way to US study. I immensely enjoyed talking to you, and I wish you all a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.